The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Commander stepped onto the metal floor of Galactic Fleet Academy Station Ascendant Prime. She took a deep breath. The air smelled clean, almost too clean, like it had been scrubbed of everything natural. She had spent 3 months traveling through space to reach this place. Now she was finally here. The station was massive. Had seen the pictures during her briefings back on Earth, but pictures could not capture the true size of it. The ceiling stretched so high above her that she could barely see it. Lights floated in the air without any wires holding them up. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved through the wide corridors, speaking in languages her translator chip struggled to keep up with. She was the first human to ever set foot in this place, the first Earthling accepted into the elite officer training program. Back home, they had called her a pioneer, a hero, the woman who would represent humanity among the stars. Here, she was something else entirely. The intake processing area was a large circular room filled with glowing terminals. Walked to the one marked for new arrivals and placed her hand on the scanning pad. The machine hummed as it read her biological data. Then her information appeared on a floating screen above the terminal. Species Terran, origin world Earth, classification Class 7, documented psionic abilities none, natural energy projection none, exoskeletal enhancement none, biological weapons none. The screen flickered, and a single word appeared at the bottom in red letters: baseline. Heard whispers behind her. She did not turn around, but she could feel eyes watching her. Many eyes. Some species here had 4 eyes, some had 6, some had eyes that could see through walls. "A Terran," someone said. The voice was deep and rumbling like stones grinding together. I did not believe the reports. "They actually sent us a baseline," another voice replied. This one was higher, almost musical. How wonderfully primitive. I thought this was supposed to be an elite program. Finished her processing and picked up her assigned data tablet. It showed her room number, her class schedule, and her equipment requisition status. The requisition status was marked as deprioritized. She did not know exactly what that meant, but she could guess. She walked toward the corridor that led to the living quarters. As she walked, she passed aliens of every kind. They were tall and thin, with silver skin and large dark eyes. They communicated through telepathy, had read that they could share thoughts and feelings instantly with each other. Some of them could even read minds. They were covered in scales that shifted colors depending on their mood. Right now, a group of them stood near a water fountain, and their scales glowed with soft orange and yellow light. They could generate plasma from their own bodies. Actual plasma, hot enough to melt metal. They used it as a weapon, a tool, and sometimes just for show. They were shorter but incredibly dense. Their skin looked like rock. They had the ability to control gravity itself. Had watched training videos of cadets creating gravity wells strong enough to crush steel beams into tiny balls. And then there was her, from Earth, a planet so hostile that its dominant species had evolved nothing special at all. No telepathy, no plasma, no gravity control, nothing. The Galactic Council had nearly classified humans as non-sentient when they first made contact. The Council could not understand how a species with no abilities had managed to develop technology. No psionic species had ever needed to invent the wheel. They could simply move things with their minds. No plasma-wielding species had ever needed to discover fire. They carried it inside their bodies. But humans had done everything the hard way. They had built tools because they had no claws. They had created weapons because they had no natural defenses. They had developed mathematics and science because they had nothing else. The Council had eventually accepted that humans were indeed sentient. Barely. They called Earth a statistical anomaly, a world that should not have produced intelligent life, but somehow did anyway. Found her quarters at the end of a long hallway. The door was smaller than the others. The room inside was half the size of standard cadet housing. There was a bed that looked too short, a desk with a broken chair, and a window that faced a wall instead of the stars. She set down her bag and sat on the bed. The mattress was thin and hard. Back home, she had slept on worse. That evening, she went to the communal mess hall for dinner. The hall was enormous, filled with long tables and floating food dispensers. Hundreds of cadets sat in groups, eating and talking and laughing. The noise was overwhelming. Got her food from a dispenser. The machine scanned her species data and produced something that looked like paste, complete for Terran biology according to the label. She looked at it and sighed. She searched for a place to sit. Every table was full of aliens who stopped talking when she approached. Some of them stared, others turned away. A few laughed quietly. Finally, she found an empty seat at the far corner of the hall. It was beneath a light that flickered on and off every few seconds. No one else wanted to sit there. She sat down anyway. A cadet at the next table leaned toward his friends. His scales were bright red, which had learned meant amusement. "Look," he said, not bothering to lower his voice. "The Earthling eats like an animal, with her hands and a stick." Looked down at her fork. She did not respond. "Tell me," the continued, "what exactly are you doing here? This is a program for warriors, for beings with actual power. What can you possibly offer?" Took a bite of her paste. It tasted like nothing. "She cannot even answer," another said. "Perhaps her species lacks the intelligence for proper speech." They laughed. Others nearby joined in. Finished her meal in silence. Then she stood up, returned her tray to the dispenser, and walked back to her quarters. She did not cry. She had known this would happen. Every briefing, every report, every piece of intelligence had warned her. Humans were not respected in the galactic community. They were tolerated at best, mocked at worst. But she had not come here to be liked. She had come here to prove something. She lay down on her thin mattress and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, training would begin. Tomorrow, she would show them what she could do. Or she would fail, and humanity's first representative to the stars would return home in shame. Either way, she would face it. That was what humans did. They faced things. It was the only ability they had. 3 weeks passed and became the Academy's favorite joke. Every morning began with psionic combat drills. The cadets would stand in a circle and fight with their minds. Could not see the attacks. She could not feel them. She could only stand at the edge of the training room and watch as silver-skinned aliens winced and dodged invisible strikes. Sometimes a would collapse, overwhelmed by a mental assault. Sometimes one would cry out in victory. Stood there like a statue. The instructor, an ancient with pale eyes, had stopped acknowledging her after the first week. "Psionic combat is the foundation of modern warfare," the instructor would say. "Those who cannot participate may observe." So observed. She watched how they moved. She noticed that they always closed their eyes slightly before launching an attack. She saw that they stepped backward when defending, forward when attacking. She memorized their patterns even though she could never use them herself. Energy manipulation class was worse. The cadets would stand in a row and create plasma from nothing. They shaped it into balls, into blades, into shields. The heat was intense. Had to stand far back to avoid being burned. "Focus your internal energy," the instructor growled. "Let it flow through your scales and into the air. Shape it with your will." Had no scales. She had no internal energy that she could project outward. She had only skin and muscle and bone. The instructor never called on her, not once. After energy manipulation came gravity control with the. This class was held in a special room with reinforced floors and walls. The cadets would concentrate and create gravity wells that pulled everything toward them. Then they would reverse the effect and send objects flying upward. Some could create small black holes that existed for just a second before collapsing. Was told to stay in the observation area. Too dangerous, they said. A baseline could be killed by even a small gravity fluctuation. She stayed, she watched, she learned what she could. In the evenings, there was tactical theory. This was the one class where could participate fully. The material was transmitted directly into the brains of other cadets through neural download. They could absorb an entire textbook in seconds. Had to read, word by word, page by page, late into the night while others slept. Her data tablet glowed in the darkness of her tiny room as she memorized fleet formations, battle strategies, and historical campaigns. She was always tired, she was always behind, but she kept going. The cadet who had mocked her on the first day was named. He was large even for his species, with scales that shifted from deep red to bright orange. His plasma abilities were considered exceptional. The instructors praised him constantly. Had made his personal entertainment. Every day, he found new ways to remind her that she did not belong. He would accidentally superheat the air near her during meals, making her sweat while others laughed. He would create small plasma balls and throw them at her feet as she walked through the corridors, forcing her to jump aside. He recorded her struggles during training and shared the videos with his thousands of followers across the station network. Daily Earthling update, he would announce to his friends. Today our primitive friend failed to lift the standard training weight. Again, shocking, I know. The standard training weight was designed for species with enhanced strength or gravity control. It weighed as much as a small vehicle. No baseline species was ever expected to lift it. But that did not stop the laughter. One evening was walking back to her quarters after a long day. Her body ached. Her eyes burned from hours of reading. She wanted nothing more than to sleep. Was waiting in the corridor with a group of his admirers. "Earthling," he called out, "we were just discussing your species. Tell me, is it true that humans cannot even survive on most planets? That your bodies are so poorly designed that you need special suits and equipment just to breathe?" Stopped walking. "Yes," she said simply, "that is true." Laughed. "Remarkable. You admit your own weakness so easily. Perhaps you might demonstrate your species' famous adaptability for us. Here." He created a ball of plasma in his hand. It crackled and hissed, glowing white-hot. Then he threw it at her feet. Saw it coming. She had been watching plasma techniques for 3 weeks. She knew the trajectory before the ball even left his hand. She stepped to the side, smooth and quick, and the plasma scorched the deck where she had been standing. The metal floor melted. Smoke rose into the air. Scales flickered to yellow, surprise, then back to red, amusement. "Lucky," he said, "try again." He threw another plasma ball, dodged. Another, she dodged. Another, she dodged. Stopped throwing. His scales had shifted to something darker, annoyance maybe, or frustration. Looked at him for a long moment, then she turned and walked away. "Running away," called after her. "That is all your species can do, is it not? Run and hide and hope the real predators do not find you." Did not answer, she kept walking. The laughter followed her down the corridor. It always did. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, for the first time, there had been a moment of silence. A moment when had thrown his best attacks and she had simply stepped aside. She reached her quarters and closed the door behind her. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from something else. She had been watching them for 3 weeks, learning their patterns, studying their movements, and tonight she had proven to herself that she could predict them. She could not match their power. She knew that. No amount of training would give her telepathy or plasma or gravity control. But she was learning to survive against them. And on Earth, survival was the first step to victory. She sat down on her bed and began to plan. Senior Instructor X called her into his office the next day. He had 4 eyes that blinked in sequence, and his voice was cold and formal. "Cadet," he said, "your performance evaluations are concerning. You have failed to demonstrate in any primary combat discipline. You cannot participate in psionic training. You cannot generate energy. You cannot manipulate gravity. I understand, sir, said. Perhaps, X continued, you might be better suited for logistical support roles, supply management, communications, something more appropriate for your limitations. Was quiet for a moment. With respect, sir, she said, I was sent here to complete the combat officer program. I intend to complete it. X's four eyes blinked rapidly. That is optimistic, but as you wish, you may continue for now. Saluted and left his office. She had 6 more months of training ahead. 6 more months of mockery, of failure, of being told she did not belong. She would endure it all. Because that was what humans did. What the other cadets did not know, what the Galactic Council's species assessment had completely failed to understand, was why Earth was classified as a Class 7. They thought they knew. The reports talked about predators with sharp teeth and claws. They mentioned the climate that could shift from burning heat to freezing cold within hours. They described the earthquakes, the volcanoes, the hurricanes, and the floods. All of these things were true. Earth was indeed a dangerous place. But none of these were the real reason. The real reason was gravity. Earth's gravitational pull was 9.8 meters per second squared. This number meant nothing to most aliens. It was just data in a report, but knew what it truly meant. She had lived under that weight her entire life. Earth's gravity was nearly twice the galactic standard for inhabited worlds. Most species in the galaxy had evolved on planets with gentle gravity. Their bones were light. Their muscles were efficient but not strong. They did not need to be strong because their worlds did not demand it. They developed other abilities instead: telepathy, energy projection, gravity manipulation. These gifts made physical strength unnecessary. But Earth had given humanity nothing except weight. Crushing, constant, unforgiving weight. Every human who had ever lived had spent their existence fighting against that pull. From the moment they were born until the moment they died, gravity was trying to drag them down. Their hearts had to pump blood upward against it. Their legs had to lift their bodies against it. Their spines had to hold them upright against it. Evolution had responded to this challenge. Human bones became dense, far denser than those of other species. Human muscles grew thick and powerful, capable of generating tremendous force. Human tendons and ligaments became tough as cables. Human hearts became strong pumps that could work for 100 years without stopping. None of this appeared in the Galactic Council's reports. The scientists who studied humanity had focused on what humans lacked: no psionics, no natural weapons, no special abilities. They had never thought to measure what humans actually had. Had thought about it. She had thought about it every day since arriving on Ascendant Prime. The station maintained artificial gravity at 0.6 g. This was the galactic standard. It was comfortable for most species. For it felt like nothing. She remembered her first morning on the station. She had gotten out of bed and nearly launched herself into the ceiling. Her legs, trained by 30 years of Earth gravity, had pushed with their usual force, but the resistance was not there. She had floated upward like a balloon. She had learned to control herself quickly. She moved carefully, gently, keeping her strength hidden. She did not want anyone to notice. Not yet. But every day, her body was adapting to the lighter gravity, and not in the way the station doctors expected. When a human spent time in low gravity, their muscles should weaken. Their bones should lose density. This was what had happened to astronauts in the early days of space travel. But those astronauts had been floating in zero gravity doing nothing, was different, was training. Every night, alone in her quarters, she pushed her body to its limits. She had brought resistance bands from Earth, rated for industrial cargo loading machines. She stretched them until they nearly snapped. She did push-ups with her feet elevated, adding difficulty that did not exist in this lighter gravity. She ran in place, lifting her knees as high as they could go for hours at a time. Her muscles did not weaken, they grew stronger. Without Earth's gravity constantly fighting against her, her body had excess capacity. Energy that would normally be spent just standing upright was now available for other things. Her recovery time shortened. Her strength increased. Her speed improved. She ran calculations late at night on her data tablet. Force equals mass times acceleration. Her mass remained the same, but her muscles could now accelerate her body faster than ever before. Much faster. She had tested herself carefully in private. She had punched a wall in her quarters at full strength. The metal had dented inward. She had stopped testing after that, afraid someone would notice the damage. The numbers she calculated were remarkable. Back on Earth, she had been a trained soldier, strong but not extraordinary. Here, with the reduced gravity working in her favor, she was something else entirely. She thought about the training floor. She had seen cadets create gravity wells that cracked its surface. She had seen plasma splash against it without leaving a mark. The floor was made of specialized alloy designed to absorb tremendous amounts of energy. She wondered if it could absorb what she could deliver. 2 months into her training, something changed. The whispers became louder. The mockery became, but notice something else. Some of the cadets had started watching her differently. A young named had approached her in the mess hall one evening. Was small for her species, with silver skin that seemed almost blue in certain lights. "You are still here," said. It was not a question. "Yes," replied. "They expected you to quit. Everyone did. Bet 50 credits that you would not last 2 weeks. He lost that bet." Tilted her head. The gesture meant curiosity among her people. "You cannot do anything we can do, you have no gifts, yet you remain. Why?" Considered the question. "On Earth," she said slowly, "there is an old story about a turtle and a rabbit. The rabbit was fast. The turtle was slow. They raced each other. Everyone expected the rabbit to win easily. But the rabbit was overconfident, it stopped to rest. The turtle kept going, step by step, never stopping. The turtle won." Large dark eyes blinked. "You believe you are the turtle." "I believe that speed and power are not the only things that matter. Persistence matters too. Endurance. The willingness to keep moving when everything tells you to stop." Was quiet for a moment, then she nodded slowly. "I have felt your mind," she said. "When I pass you in the corridors I sense something. You are not like other baselines I have encountered. There is a weight inside you, a pressure. I do not understand it." Smiled slightly. "Maybe someday I will explain it." She returned to her meal, watched her for a moment longer, then walked away. That night trained harder than ever. She pushed herself until her muscles burned, until sweat soaked through her clothes, until her heart pounded against her ribs like a drum. She was getting close now, close to understanding what she had become. The combat proficiency finals were 1 month away. Every cadet would be tested. Every cadet would have to demonstrate their abilities. Had been bragging for weeks. He was going to make an example of someone during the finals. Someone weak, someone pathetic, someone everyone would enjoy watching suffer. He did not say his name. He did not need to. Everyone knew who he meant. Heard the rumors. She knew what was coming. She was counting on it. The combat proficiency finals arrived on a station morning that felt exactly like every other. The artificial sun panels brightened slowly. The temperature adjusted to optimal levels. Nothing special marked the day except the nervous energy that filled every corridor and common room. Woke early. She had barely slept. Her body hummed with tension, with readiness, with something that might have been fear or might have been excitement. She could not tell the difference anymore. She ate breakfast alone as always. The paste tasted the same as it had for months. She ate every bite, knowing she would need the energy. The training arena was the largest space on the station. It was built to contain the most powerful abilities the galaxy's young warriors could produce. The floor was made of a specialized alloy that had taken the Galactic Council centuries to develop. It could absorb plasma explosions. It could withstand gravity fluctuations. It could resist psionic energy discharge. It was considered nearly indestructible. When entered the arena, the observation platforms were already filling with spectators. Every cadet on the station seemed to have found a seat. Word had spread about what was going to happen today, had made sure of that. The arena floor was a perfect circle, 200 meters across. Floating cameras hovered above it, ready to broadcast the matches across the station network. Several instructors sat in the judges' platform, their faces serious and formal. Senior Instructor X stood at the center of the floor. His 4 eyes swept across the gathering crowd. "Combat Proficiency Finals will now begin," he announced. His voice was amplified to reach every corner of the arena. "Today, each cadet will demonstrate their combat readiness. Matches will continue until one participant yields or is incapacitated. All standard safety protocols are in effect." The first several matches were impressive. A cadet created a gravity well that lifted his opponent 10 meters into the air before slamming him back down. 2 engaged in a psionic duel so intense that several spectators reported headaches just from proximity. A female covered herself in plasma armor and walked through every attack her opponent could throw. Watched from the waiting area, she studied each fighter. She noted their techniques, their timing, their weaknesses, old habits from her military training back on Earth. Then X called the name she had been waiting to hear. "Cadet." The walked onto the arena floor like a conquering hero. His scales blazed orange and red, displaying confidence and aggression. The crowd cheered. He was popular. He was powerful. He was everything the Academy valued. Bowed to the judges, then he spoke. "I would like to request a specific opponent, if the rules allow." X's 4 eyes narrowed slightly. "The rules do allow specific challenges, yes. Who do you wish to face?" Turned and pointed directly at the Earthling. The arena fell silent for a moment. Then whispers erupted everywhere. Some cadets laughed. Others looked uncomfortable. A few shook their heads in disappointment. One of the other instructors leaned toward X. "Sir, perhaps we should not allow this. The Terran has no combat abilities. This is not a fair match." "It is within the rules," said loudly. "The rules do not require matches to be fair. They require matches to be educational. And I think everyone here could learn something from watching a demonstration of what true power looks like compared to a baseline primitive." More laughter from the crowd. Some voices called out in support. X was quiet for a long moment. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as he considered the situation. "Cadet," he finally said, "you have been challenged. You may decline if you wish. There will be no penalty." Stood up from the waiting area. Every eye in the arena turned to watch her. She walked onto the floor. Her footsteps were steady. Her face showed nothing. "I accept," she said. Scales flashed bright red. "Pleasure. Excellent. This should not take long." They faced each other across 20 meters of specialized alloy flooring. Stood with his arms slightly raised, plasma already beginning to glow beneath his scales. Stood with her hands at her sides, feet planted, breathing slowly. "The rules are simple," X announced. "First to yield or incapacitation. Lethal force is prohibited, but enforcement falls to the individual conscience of each combatant. Healers are standing by. Are both participants ready?" "Ready," said. "Ready," said. "Begin." Did not wait. Twin spirals of plasma erupted from his hands before the word was fully spoken. The fire coiled through the air in a complex pattern designed to cut off all escape routes. Left, right, above, below. Every direction was blocked by burning death. Did not try to escape. She had been watching combat techniques for 4 months. She had memorized how they shaped their plasma. She knew the small delay between forming a pattern and launching it. She knew the gaps that always existed between the spiral curves. She moved forward. The crowd gasped. Running toward a plasma attack was suicide. Everyone knew this. But was not running. She was dancing. Her body twisted between the spirals with millimeters to spare. The heat washed over her, scorching but not burning. Her uniform began to smoke. She ignored it. Scales flickered to yellow. Confusion. He had never missed a target this close. He increased the intensity. More plasma poured from his body, filling the air with fire. The temperature in the arena rose by 20 degrees. Spectators in the front rows leaned back from the heat. Kept coming. She was inside his effective range before he could adjust. Most plasma wielders needed distance to shape their attacks. Up close, they were vulnerable. Her hand closed around his wrist, the same wrist that had thrown plasma at her feet all those months ago. Scales went white, shock, fear. Yield said, her voice was quiet, almost kind. For a moment she thought he might do it. His scales flickered through several colors in rapid succession, processing, deciding. Then they settled on dark red, rage. Never, he snarled, never to a primitive. He released his plasma directly into her grip, point-blank discharge, full power, enough heat to melt steel in seconds. His hand burned. She felt the skin blister and crack. The pain was extraordinary, like holding her arm in a furnace. Her uniform sleeve caught fire. The smell of burning fabric and flesh filled her nostrils. She did not let go. Her fingers tightened around his wrist. The bones beneath his scales creaked under pressure he had never experienced before. I said yield, she repeated. Poured more plasma into the attack. His entire arm was glowing now. The floor beneath them began to soften from the heat. What are you? He gasped. Why will you not let go? Looked into his eyes. Her face was twisted with pain, but her gaze was steady. On my world, she said through gritted teeth, we have a saying, pain is weakness leaving the body. She pulled him closer, her grip like iron despite the fire consuming her arm. I have a lot of weakness to lose. The crowd had gone completely silent. No one was laughing anymore. No one was whispering. Every being in the arena was watching the impossible happen. A baseline was holding a plasma wielder at close range, and she was not dying. Scales had turned a color no one had ever seen on him before. Fear mixed with exhaustion. He was pouring everything he had into his attack, and it was not enough. This is your last chance, said. Yield now and this ends. His eyes were wild. His pride was at war with his survival instinct. He had never yielded to anyone. He was the strongest in his class. He was supposed to be untouchable. I will never yield, he spat, to something like you. Nodded slowly. She had given him the chance, more chances than he deserved. Then, she said, let me show you what something like me can do. She released his wrist. She stepped back, and she set her stance, planted her feet against the arena floor. The specialized alloy was warm beneath her boots, heated by months of plasma discharge and energy attacks. She had walked across this floor dozens of times. She had watched it absorb forces that would destroy ordinary materials. Now she was going to test its limits. Her stance was simple, feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent, weight centered over her hips. It was the same stance her mother had taught her in their garage gym back on Earth, back under the crushing gravity that had forged humanity into something the galaxy did not understand. Her right arm hung at her side. The skin was blackened and blistered from plasma. The pain was constant, throbbing through her with every heartbeat. She had experienced worse, training accidents, combat wounds. The time she had fallen from a cliff during survival training and broken 3 ribs. Pain was familiar. Pain was manageable. Pain was just information. She drew her arm back, slowly, deliberately. Every eye in the arena watched her movement. The floating cameras zoomed in close. stood a few meters away, his plasma flickering weakly. He had exhausted himself trying to burn through her grip. His scales had lost their bright colors, fading to a dull orange. He did not understand what was happening. "What are you doing?" he demanded. His voice was shaky. "You cannot hurt me. You have no abilities. You are nothing." Did not answer. She was focused entirely on the floor beneath her feet. She thought about Earth, about the weight that had pressed down on her every moment of her life, about the strength her body had built just to exist under that crushing force, about what that strength could do here, in this lighter gravity, against a floor that had never faced anything like it. She thought about all the times they had laughed at her, all the times they had called her primitive, all the times they had looked at her species classification and seen nothing but weakness. Then she stopped thinking entirely. Her arm shot forward. Every muscle in her body contributed to the motion. Her legs pushed against the floor. Her hips rotated. Her shoulder drove forward. Her arm extended. Her fist connected. The impact sounded like thunder. The specialized alloy, designed to withstand plasma explosions and gravity wells and psionic attacks, shattered like glass. Cracks spread outward from the point of impact in every direction. The floor buckled. Support structures beneath the surface snapped and twisted. A shockwave rolled across the arena, knocking off his feet and sending cadets in the first 3 rows tumbling backward. For a long moment, everything was still. Remained in her stance, fist pressed against the broken floor. She was breathing hard. Her arm throbbed with pain. Around her, the arena looked like it had been hit by a bomb. The silence was absolute. No one moved. No one spoke. No one even seemed to breathe. Then straightened up. She looked at her fist. The knuckles were scraped and bleeding. Small fragments of alloy were embedded in her skin. She would need medical attention soon. But not yet. Not until she had said what needed to be said. She turned to face the observation platforms. Hundreds of aliens stared down at her with expressions she had never seen before. Shock, confusion, fear, wonder. "You assessed my species incorrectly," she said. Her voice carried easily in the silence. She did not need amplification. "You looked at our biological data and saw that we had no gifts, no telepathy, no plasma, no gravity control. You concluded that we were weak." She stepped out of the crater she had made. Fragments of flooring crunched beneath her boots. "You did not ask the right questions. You did not wonder what kind of world produces a species with no special abilities, and yet they still reached the stars. You did not consider what we had to become to survive without gifts." Was struggling to his feet nearby. His scales were pale. He was staring at the destroyed floor with an expression of complete disbelief. Turned to face him. "On Earth," she continued, "gravity is nearly twice what it is here. Every human who has ever lived has spent their entire existence under a weight that would cripple most of you within hours. We did not evolve telepathy because we did not need it. We did not develop plasma because we did not need it. What we needed was the ability to survive against a planet that was constantly trying to crush us." She held up her burned hand. The blisters were already beginning to heal. Humans regenerated quickly, another gift from their death world. "Our bones are dense as your starship armor. Our muscles can generate force that your strongest species cannot match. Our bodies can take damage that would kill most beings in this galaxy. We evolved to endure, to persist, to keep going when everything says we should stop." She walked toward. He stumbled backward, nearly tripping over debris. "Your plasma hurt me," she admitted. "I will not lie about that, but I have been hurt before. Every human has. Pain is not our enemy, it is our teacher. It shows us where our limits are so that we can push past them." She stopped directly in front of him. They stood eye to eye. "I do not have your gifts," she said. "I cannot read minds or throw fire or bend gravity. But I can take everything you throw at me and keep coming. I can outlast you. I can you. And when you finally run out of energy, when your plasma fades and your strength fails, I will still be standing." She extended her hand toward him, the same burned, blistered hand that he had tried so hard to destroy. "Yield," she said quietly. "There is no shame in it. You fought well. You just did not understand what you were fighting." Looked at her hand, looked at the crater behind her, looked at the hundreds of beings watching from the platforms above. His scales slowly shifted color, orange, yellow, then a soft blue that had never seen before on a acceptance. "I yield," he said. His voice was rough, barely audible. "I yield to you, human." Nodded, she gripped his hand firmly and helped steady him. Senior Instructor X finally found his voice. "Winner by yield," he announced. His 4 eyes were blinking rapidly, still processing what he had witnessed. "Cadet." No one cheered. No one applauded. The silence continued for several long seconds. Then, from somewhere in the observation platforms, a single voice spoke. "Stars above," the voice said. "What are these humans?" Heard the question. She smiled slightly despite her pain. She looked up at the watching aliens, at the beings who had mocked her, dismissed her, called her primitive and weak. They were not laughing now. They were not whispering jokes. They were looking at her with something new in their eyes. Understanding, and perhaps a little bit of fear. "We are humans," she said simply. "We are what gravity makes." She walked out of the arena, leaving behind a shattered floor and a station full of beings who would never underestimate humanity again. Behind her she heard the whispers starting, but they were different now. They were not jokes or mockery. They were questions, concerns, calculations about what it meant that this baseline species, this statistical anomaly, could produce individuals capable of breaking supposedly unbreakable things. Did not stop to listen. She had made her point. Now she needed to find the medical bay and get her arm treated. Tomorrow, training would continue. There would be more classes, more exercises, more challenges. The other cadets would probably keep their distance for a while. That was fine. She had not come here to make friends. She had come here to prove something, and she had. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not primitive. Humanity was the product of a world that demanded everything from its children and received exactly that in return. The galaxy would learn this lesson, one way or another. Smiled as she walked. Her arm hurt. Her body was exhausted. Her uniform was burned and torn. But she felt lighter than she had in months. Tomorrow would be better. Tomorrow they would know her name.